Hey! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Live Free Now show, bringing you news, views, tips, tools, all things that you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. That's the remix on our little intro spiel. We got a great program lined up for you today. We're going to be joined by Dani Katz. She is a conscious language expert, specialist, whiz, bringing you all the things that you could ever hope for when it comes to crafting a life of your dreams, living your purpose, and overcoming limiting beliefs, because our language is super potent, very powerful. Let me make sure our audio is playing. Speaking of language, let's see real quick. Can't hear anything there. So let me know in the chat if you can hear us just fine. We started a new platform that's supposed to be less complicated, but still learning. We should be fine. All right. So, yeah, we're joined by the one, the only Manitty.
What up?
And we're coming at you flanneled out today.
Back in the saddle after being kicked off the show the last couple of weeks.
Becca gave him the boot.
The boot.
She wanted to do a couples thing. In case you missed our show last week, River and Amani in the house. That was a good show. Check out livefreenow.show to subscribe to the podcast. Livefreenow.show to subscribe.
Looks like we got another couple hundred subscribers. So thanks, y'all. Thanks for subscribing, tuning into the show. And we're excited to bring you guys great content every single week and a couple of dick jokes. Remember, moderate raunch.
That was full-on raunch.
That wasn't full-on raunch.
You're off the show again.
Damn it.
I guess you're commenting on our extra 12.5K subscribers.
Yeah, it was 12.3. Now it's 12.5.
All right, guys, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and the show. And to help encourage you, we got a little subscribe thing. Is that backwards?
That's backwards.
It's just we're
totally figuring it out here, y'all.
Off the rails today. We do want to shout out our audience tuning in on X, tuning in on YouTube, tuning in on the old Facebook. Let us know where you're streaming from. Like I said, we got a great show for you today. We're going to be joined by Dani Katz at 11:30. In the meantime, we want to shout out a couple sponsors, and then we're going to talk a bit about this upcoming webinar we have, which is tomorrow. If you're tuning into this on the 11th, it'll be the 12th. You'll be able to catch the replay for a good week or so. And then we're going to hit the conspiracy corner where Ryan's going to go even further off the rails. We're going to be so far off the rails, we're going to be like floating in cyberspace. No? It looks like he's got Manly P. Hall there.
Manly P. Hall and David Icke.
David Icke.
And it's not what you guys think.
All right, so we had a couple watching. Now we just have one. Let's go ahead. I want to invite you guys to this webinar that we're going to be doing here pretty soon. We're going to go ahead and play the video for you guys to check out, and it's all about Bitcoin and Monero. Hey, it's John Bush with Live Free Academy. Here's 3 reasons why you should consider diving deep on Bitcoin. Reason number 1, Bitcoin will protect your wealth from inflation and government chicanery. Bitcoin is a decentralized system outside of the normal fiat monetary control grid. Bitcoin is peer-to-peer, and there's a finite supply of these tokens. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Contrast that with the fiat currencies like the dollar, the pound, or the euro that are infinitely inflatable. As that money supply increases, the value of the existing dollars goes down, which means if you got money in the savings account, then the value is going to be dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. With Bitcoin, it's exactly the opposite. There's a finite supply that's in ever increasing demand. It's important if you want to protect or grow wealth to get your hands on some Bitcoin. The second reason is because Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. That's right. Because of its decentralized nature, you can hold Bitcoin in a non-custodial wallet. That's a wallet where only you have control over this cryptocurrency, and there's nothing a person or government can do to take it away from you. Now, mind you, of course, a court order could be issued or the government could come and try to coerce you into giving up your crypto, but that's the case with every other asset that's out there. The key difference, and I say key purposefully, the private key difference is that you now have a choice whether or not to comply. This is something that's entirely new when it comes to assets that have value. And I'm encouraging you to be a strong, courageous, free person, to hold on to your wealth that you've created, that you own, and to tell the government to pound sand. Reason number 3, when you invest in Bitcoin, when you onboard into the cryptocurrency space, you're joining a community and you are joining a mission to create greater financial sovereignty in this world. Let's face it, central banks and fiat currencies have been responsible for massive unjust behavior. From foreign wars of aggression to growing the police and the surveillance state, Bitcoin aims to put a stop to this. Not just Bitcoin, but privacy coins like Monero enable us to create our own alternative, private, competing counter economies. So when you're investing in Bitcoin and using other cryptocurrencies like Monero, you're joining the mission to create a more free society. Hey, if you want to learn how Bitcoin can help you to unlock your financial sovereignty, we're doing a free webinar. You can sign up today at livefree.academy/unlock. That's livefree.academy/unlock, where I'll explain more in depth how Bitcoin and Monero are wonderful tools for your arsenal when it comes to creating true financial sovereignty. Livefree.academy/unlock, livefree.academy/unlock, where you can sign up and register for free. Again, livefree.academy/unlock. Check it out. I'll take you here. It's a webinar. We're going to be doing it tomorrow. We'll probably go for 2 or 3 hours or so. There'll be plenty of time for question and answers if you have questions about Bitcoin or Monero as well. Before we get to Manitti's Conspiracy Corner today, I'm doing a shout out our good friend Roger Ver. If you've been following the show for a while, or if you've been in the crypto space, you'll know that we're talking about Roger Ver, a friend of mine who's supported a lot of the work that I've done in the past. He actually was on old Tucker Carlson. So we shared with you about Roger Ver and how he is being persecuted by the government. He's an early crypto investor. He earned the nickname Bitcoin Jesus. In fact, he was the very first person to invest in Bitcoin startup companies early on, 2010, 2011. He, in large part, helped to get things off the ground for that movement. And then he was a controversial figure during the block size wars, where people were debating on how to scale Bitcoin. And he recently wrote this book called Hijacking Bitcoin, which gets in depth on how, in some ways, the developers were captured by large corporations. There's banking interests at play, and the essentially psychological operation that helped to push Bitcoin away from being a peer-to-peer electronic currency aimed at competing with the US dollar and completely upending the legacy financial institutions. And it kind of shifted into this store of value, digital gold, valuable digital asset that people buy and hold, which is still pretty damn cool. And there's opportunity there for free people, but it's most definitely not as revolutionary as a peer-to-peer electronic cash. So thanks to the work of some really solid people like Aaron Day, our good friend, who we interviewed on the show in the past, he helped, along with this collection of awesome advocates, to get Roger on Tucker. And so you can check that out. The X, I'm trying to pull up my X feed here, but it's all jacked up. But shout out to the folks that are watching on X right now. You can definitely find that X on Tucker Carlson's thing. Tucker Carlson has a lot of stuff going on X. But I wanted to highlight something because Ver is, through and through, he's a freedom maximalist. He's not a Bitcoin maximalist or Bitcoin Cash maximalist. He cares about cryptocurrencies that can help liberate people from the legacy financial control system, not just the legacy system, but the coming CBDC system, which aims to put us all on a financial control grid. But he actually had opportunity to promote Monero and Zano. Monero, of course, is a privacy cryptocurrency. It's the world's most private cryptocurrency, unlike Bitcoin, which has a transparent ledger. And he also talked about Zano, which is, it uses the Monero privacy technology, but it's going to allow people to create their own assets on top of a private blockchain, which is cool, tokens. It's also going to, there's this really cool thing he shares. We'll go ahead and play the video and then I'll break it down. And then we'll hit the conspiracy corner with Manity.
I didn't know it was going to be going to me.
That's why I got you. And we'll hit the conspiracy corner. Then we'll hear from the one, the only Dani Katz, a.k.a. DK. All right, let's hear from Roger Ver. And again, you should listen to the whole 40-minute interview. It outlines how he's being persecuted for bogus tax charges. They're trying to extradite him from Spain to the U.S. And there's a whole movement, freerogernow.org, to help get those charges dropped. But let's check out this video.
But luckily, there's other cryptocurrencies out there that do give people more privacy. So there's things like Monero, which most people are now using if they want some privacy. But there's even more exciting technologies and coins out there. There's another one called Zano that allows anybody to create their own privacy token in which nobody can see what's going on. And if you really want to get the three-letter agencies upset or governments upset, there's a project called Confidential Layer, which is creating a bridge from Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum onto Zano. So you can take Bitcoin with no privacy at all or Ethereum with no privacy at all and bridge it permissionlessly with no custodian and no central point of attack onto Zano. And when it's on Zano, you have very, very strong privacy with that as well. And so I think that's going to make a whole lot more privacy come to the entire cryptocurrency ecosystem. But governments are going to hate that. Like Monero that I mentioned before, it's preemptively banned from being listed on most exchanges in most of the world at this point. And that's simply because governments have much less of an ability to spy on people that are using things like Monero or Zano. And that's why I'm a big fan of things like Monero or Zano today. And in fact, today, I would be embarrassed to promote, I am embarrassed to promote Bitcoin to people today because the transactions are slow, expensive, unreliable, and you have no privacy. I would be proud to promote something like a Monero or a Zano or a Zcash or a Zcoin or any of these privacy tools out there because those are the ones that provide more individual control to people and more privacy and more economic freedom to people over the world. People are claiming that Bitcoin is freedom money, but I'm really afraid that they're literally building the financial prison walls around themselves. Like if you look at what's going on in El Salvador, everybody's excited about Bitcoin there, but they're all using custodial accounts that the government can see every single transaction you're making and they can freeze your account at any time. That's the exact opposite of economic freedom. That's economic government control. And so anybody that's paying attention should be really, really concerned about this. And they should be advocating the use of cryptocurrencies in which individuals can actually have control of their own money and have control over their own lives, their own destiny. And maybe that'll be Bitcoin thanks to this new technology called Confidential Layer that bridges it onto Zano. But and I don't know what it's going to be, but like we need to be really, really careful because, you know, it could wind up that before we know it and before we realize it, we've built the financial prison walls around us and it's too late to get out and too late to escape. So let's be aware of this today and watch out.
We're back. You know, the honest truth is this is the platform that I normally would use. Let me show you. And it's like all high techy. And, it took a lot to learn it. But it turns out that I know it better. And maybe I should have just stuck with the challenging platform. See how we have all these different shots? We can switch between the shots here. Pretty cool, huh? And you could do all sorts of custom stuff, like create these little outline things, and you can bring in different microphones and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know, just giving you guys a little behind the scenes here. You probably don't care, and you can't even see it if you're listening to the podcast, but this is life. And anyway, All right. So I just wanted to comment on something that old Ver shared. And Ver share, bear hair. Now I got to stop sharing the screen, and I don't even know what's going on here. Oh, I know what's going on there. Sorry. Okay. Ver was talking about Bitcoin. He said he's embarrassed to promote it. He's really frustrated about how things went with the Bitcoin movement and it's shifting away from peer-to-peer electronic cash towards store of value. Totally resonate with all that. I do still feel as though there is an opportunity for folks that have wealth or want to build or grow wealth with Bitcoin because it's less controversial and revolutionary now and is more of a digital asset that people buy and hold. Governments hold it, like El Salvador. Banks are going to start custodying it on behalf of their clients. Not to mention ETFs have been launched. I do believe there's going to be more financial growth. And there are people like Roger Ver, for example, that made a lot of money with Bitcoin and took that wealth and put it into the cause of freedom. So, compared to traditional ETFs, I don't think you should get a Bitcoin ETF, by the way, a BTF. You got to buy it and hold it. So avoid custodial solutions. That's what he was talking about with El Salvador. But that's why I'm a big fan of Monero, as he was talking about as well. You got Bitcoin to store wealth, to protect value, digital gold, and then you use a cryptocurrency like Monero, which is totally private, as our peer-to-peer electronic cash for trading outside of the system. And let me go ahead and share the interview with you. I just pulled it up. I'll drop it there in the comments for those of you that are watching. Let us know where you're tuning in from, friends. We always are excited to hear from our folks coming in from all over the country, all over the world. So, yeah, and again, check out the webinar. We'll be breaking that down. Looks like Manitti's got something to say.
Well,
wait.
Yeah. Just to piggyback a little bit off of that is, he had a lot of good points, and he wrote the book Hijacking Bitcoin.
He wrote the book.
But one thing that's interesting to note, and John touched on it, is non-custodial wallets, because he's talking about in El Salvador, they're all using custodial wallets. And obviously that's not something that we recommend, not something that we teach. And if you guys attend the webinar tomorrow, you guys will learn a little bit more about non-custodial wallets. And also, buying peer-to-peer. You don't have to buy from a centralized exchange where the government knows exactly where you bought it from and they can trace it and tax it and all of that kind of stuff. You can buy it from another person who will sell it to you privately. You can send them a check or cash in the mail, and then they'll just send it to your wallet, which the government doesn't necessarily have to know about. So there's solutions to this problem that he didn't really touch on in that little clip there, but something that we'll be teaching you guys more about in tomorrow's webinar and some of the trainings that we offer here at Live Free Academy. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context there.
Let's go. All right, let's share about a couple of our sponsors here, and then we're going to do the conspiracy corner. So, Live Longer Formula, livelongerformula.com is the website. And this is somebody that is close with us here at the show, Christian Yordanov. And he's actually got some new clients from our audience. So we want to shout out the folks that are taking this free assessment. Do you want to share a little bit more about this, Brian?
Yeah, totally. And we're really, really happy with the results that Christian's been getting. A lot of people, so far, 75% of the people that are getting on the call are being like, yeah, you know what? I want to work with Christian, just because he provides such a great service. And not only just that, he really gives you all of the tools that you need to be able to fulfill your health journey long after that you're working with him. You can obviously work with him as long as you'd like, but he gives you all of the tools and knowledge that you need to be able to live your own health journey even after you guys work together. And one of the things that I think that is most advantageous in this in his curriculum is that he makes himself available to you 24/7. Obviously the man needs to sleep, but during his waking hours, he's answering questions from clients. If you have any questions about supplements or anything like that, he's your guy. You can go to him and be like, hey, does this jive with my goals? And he can tell you yes or no and give you an adequate reason why or why not. But he helps treat everything from eczema, psoriasis. My lovely wife had eczema, and she was able to experience a ton of healing by working with Christian. Her hands got significantly better. And so not only does he work with skin conditions, but gut issues, sleep issues, hormone imbalances. A lot of people may have brain frog. There's mine kicking
Brain
in.
frog.
Brain fog. So a variety of issues, hormonal issues, sleep issues. So I know a lot of people are having trouble sleeping, and that's something that needs to be addressed. So he can help you out with that. I would encourage everybody to go to livelongerformula.com and book a free 45-minute consultation. It's absolutely free to you guys. You have nothing to lose. There's nothing to, no investment. It's just to help you assess, address, and align. So go to livelongerformula.com.
LiveLongerFormula.com, totally free, nothing to lose. You may end up working with them and dramatically changing your life. Shout out to our other sponsors, Above Phone, abovephone.com/webinar, where you can tap into a free webinar they have coming up right around the corner, actually, December 19th. So if you're tuning in, today's the 11th, you got time to sign up for that. Abovephone.com/webinar, of course, and Brain Frogs. Brain frogs across the coast. Anyway, Hakeem, our good friend, is the guy behind Above Phone, and they now actually have Above Book, which is a privacy laptop built on Linux with a custom Above operating system they put together. They've also customized graphene oxide on their mobile phones that are all private.
Graphene OS, not graphene oxide, folks.
We should do a conspiracy corner on the graphene oxide.
Yeah.
That's what people think. We're in the shot. I guess we're on YouTube, so we got to be careful.
Or no.
Do you know?
There's a lot of compelling research to show that there is graphene oxide. Anyway, thank you so much to Above Phone for sponsoring the show. And we're really big advocates of Above Phone. They've got a phenomenal product, and we would encourage you guys to go over there and check out their offerings. They've got a lot of great stuff, and they may even be having a little holiday thing coming up. We don't know, but stay tuned.
Free webinar, Breaking Out of Tech Addiction, December 19th, 12:30 p.m. Looks like they're going to talk about how apps and these programs are geared towards sucking you in. You could break free. Sign up for the free webinar, abovephone.com/webinar. If you want to purchase a phone, use our link there in the description. It's a referral link, so we get a little piece of the action to help us feed the family and pay for Ryan's wedding. So thanks again to Above Phone, and we'll share about our final sponsor whenever we wrap up the program. All right, we got about 5 minutes, Maniti.
That was a hell of a read sesh. We got December 9th. We got Kos.
It's December 19th.
And we got Brain Frog. So
Brain Frog.
Forgive us for that right now. We're still getting our bearings here.
Forgive us for our sins. Okay, Ryan, what do you got on the conspiracy corner? We got about 5 minutes before the one, the only Dani Katz comes in. So let's see how far off the rail. We got about 3 or 4 minutes, but let's go. What do you got? What do you got today?
Speaking of forgiving us.
Conspiracy corner. Nice harmony.
Speaking of forgiving us for our sins, I wanted to touch on something that I just listened to the Higher Side Chats. If you haven't heard of that podcast, I would definitely encourage you to go check it out. Phenomenal podcast put on by our buddy Greg Carlwood. John's been a guest. I would encourage you to listen to that episode as well. But he just recently had on long-term conspiracy researcher and synchromysticism researcher, although he didn't coin the term, but that's kind of the field that he's been in, Michael Hoffman. So he used to work with James Shelby Downard, and they worked together on King Kill 33, all about the 33rd parallel and all of the strange anomalies that happen on that parallel. So really, really interesting stuff. But one thing that he talked about that really struck a chord with me is, there's books like this, The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Freemason. And then there's books like this, The Biggest Secret by David Icke. Obviously, we all know who he is. But, during my waking up journey, I was coming out of atheism. I was raised Catholic. And then when I went to college, took a lot of philosophy courses. It's something that really interested me. So I started going down the rabbit hole of, is God even real? And then I came to the conclusion that he wasn't. And so I was a staunch atheist for a couple of years. And then when I started getting into conspiracy research, I realized, okay, there's these satanic elite at the top, and they're doing all of this ritualism and sacrifices and all these kinds of things. And so if they're doing that, then they're pragmatists. They must be working towards something or with something, some kind of entity. So there's definitely like the dark side of the equation is there. Luciferianism, Satanism, occultism, all that kind of stuff. That in my mind, after all of the research that I did, that was 100% for real. So if Lucifer, Satan, demons, if that stuff is all real and you can work with these entities for ill-begotten ends, then the flip side of the coin must also be real as well. The angelic, God, Jesus, all. Well, actually, I wasn't a Jesus guy. So for years, I started delving into near-death experience research, and I realized that the afterlife is 100% for real. If you study near-death experience research and you comb through the 5,000 events that have happened, then you'll realize that there is an afterlife without a shadow of a doubt. But in both of these books, The Secret Teachings of All Ages by a 33rd degree Freemason and the Biggest Secret, neither touch on the biggest secret of all, which is the organized conspiracy against Jesus Christ and God. So I have now come back to my faith in Jesus and having a more devout relationship with God. And I think that is the biggest conspiracy. And the thing with conspiracies is that a lot of it is directing our attention away from God and Jesus. And it's bringing us deeper and darker down these occult rabbit holes, which Michael Hoffman explains. It's an initiation process. It's actually an occult initiation process to bring us deeper and darker down their rabbit hole that they've constructed for us. They want us to eventually know, like this whole Great Awakening thing, and everybody credits Donald Trump for that and COVID and all these things. It's actually an occult initiation ritual. They're bringing us down deeper and darker into the rabbit hole and further away from the light and love that is God and Jesus. So I think at the end of the day, this conspiracy segment that we're doing here right now, I think the biggest conspiracy that there is that people and the occult, the elite, our government are trying to lead us away from Jesus Christ and God. And that is the biggest secret. Sorry, David Icke.
All right, Manitty with the conspiracy corner.
Let's go.
I think, because I purchased mainly P. Hall's book about how to read your Bible. And I think that the Bible, or at least the Council of Nicaea and the early church fathers and leaders, I think there was a conspiracy to neuter Jesus Christ's message in large part. And what the message that we have left is less empowering than the true message that I believe Jesus was trying to convey. I think there's a conspiracy in the Bible to make it less potent, personally.
I also think that it's interesting that a 33rd degree Freemason, who Albert Pike used to be the Grand Master of the Freemasons, he explains in his book Morals and Dogma that the overarching mission of the Freemasons is to fulfill the great work of Lucifer. So I do think that it's interesting that a 33rd degree Freemason, which is the highest level that you can attain, and it's invite only, that he would explain how best to adequately read the Bible. I do think that that's an interesting dynamic there. And when I say interesting, I'm obviously being tongue-in-cheek. So just one thing to consider.
Satan's tongue-in-cheek? Anyway. Okay, we should have Jonathan England on to get into that stuff as well, because Homeboy's a wealth of knowledge. But all right, that was the Conspiracy Corner. Yeah. This is actually a good shot here with me poking. Conspiracy Corner. Whoa, yeah. All right, we got Dani Katz backstage. She's probably like, what the hell did I get myself into with these guys? The one, the only, Dani Katz. somewhere.
Can you do it? There it is.
Well, let's get rid of this screen. Hide. And what? Yeah, what?
There it is.
Ah! Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Were you guys doing your impression of the twins from Parks and Rec?
No, I don't know that show. You know that?
I've actually never seen it. Everybody always tells me.
He's a big Office guy, isn't
I'm
it?
a big
Kinda like
Office guy. But people say that if you like The Office, then you should watch Parks and Rec because it's a very good, or similar thing.
It's hilarious. And there are these two twins. One is played by Jenny Slate, and they're always singing and they're doing that thing with their hand to like harmonize like you guys were doing. They're clearly copying you.
That's right. They copied us.
That's right. Oh, we got Catherine Martin in the house. Shout out to Catherine Martin in the chat. So, Dani Katz, how the heck are you? Maybe you could introduce yourself to our audience if folks aren't familiar with your work, and then I'll share my Dani Katz origin story that was rather meaningful and just a quick little blitz of an interaction. But who is Dani Katz?
Oh my goodness gracious. Dani Katz is your basic rabble-rousing word nerd. I started off as a journalist, and we all know what happened to that industry. Around 2007, I was initiated into the vibrational frequencies of words and all of the coding laden in our language. And so I started to unpack that, created my own paradigm around it called quantum languaging. These days, I write books about how to transform ourselves and our reality with language. I also have a couple podcasts. I was the lead writer on a documentary called Plandemic 2 Indoctrination. I teach teen homeschoolers about propaganda and media literacy and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Sweet. You'll have to excuse me. I'm still getting used to this. Has been like 4 weeks of getting used to this stupid platform that was supposed to be simpler, but so there might be a little shit. Whoop, hit, ha, shh.
All good.
Okay, so language. What was it about language? How did you? Because I know that many people just have unconscious language programming, but what was it that caused you to shift and realize how powerful our words and our thoughts truly are?
So I was always obsessed with language and writing. And around 2007, I was writing super regularly for LA Weekly, Whole Life Times, LA Yoga, Reality Sandwich. I would dip in and out of Vice and Los Angeles Times. So I was always working with words. And at that time, I was going through like a deeply shamanic phase, lots of plant medicine. And I went to bed healthy one night. I was a third series Ashtanga yogi. And I woke up paralyzed and in excruciating pain, hunched over myself. My left arm was completely paralyzed. So I had 5 compressed discs in my upper cervical spine. Nothing had happened. It was totally out of nowhere. And I spent a month on the couch just going back and forth to my bookshelf, finding more books to read. And I found this book called Hidden Language Codes by R. Neville Johnston. I'd never seen the book. I had no idea how it arrived in my library. And it was about this man who was shot point blank in the chest. He died for a few minutes. And while he was dead, he was given these languaging codes. So after I read the book, I started to see the languaging codes. And because I was working with words all day, every day, it was this kind of bizarro, multidimensional conversation I was having with language where the words were inviting me into a different examination and unpacking. And I was pretty resistant. Like, I'm on a deadline. Like, I just need to, type out 2,000 words for the LA Weekly. I don't have time for this metaphysical inquiry. And after, a while of trying to stave off the languaging codes, they just became too loud. So at the LA Weekly, I was what they called their nutter butter writer. So I covered anything like New Age, mystical, entheogenic, Burning Man, like that whole realm. So I was going to a lot of, talks, lectures, and events with, people in the personal development world. And I started to see at these talks when the words would leave the speaker's mouth and how they were negatively affecting the audience. likely, unbeknownst to the speaker. So I started to see when words would leave people's mouths and the effect that they were having on the psychological body, the emotional body, the spiritual body. So I started to experiment with language with my group of friends back then in terms of like manifestation and abundance. And what I realized, I was someone who was always like too much, hot mess, so many issues, this, that. And while I did a ton of work, worked with therapists and coaches, my life didn't really change until I started to switch the languaging. That was really like the final linchpin where I started to get myself out of scarcity consciousness, where I started to develop my self-esteem and my confidence. So I feel like I really developed this communication paradigm for myself. And then, if it can benefit others, that's really wonderful.
Most excellent. So
Totally.
let me.
I got one. I got one question here. So
just one question?
Well, something that comes to mind immediately is that there's a lot of people in the spiritual or conscious community that always give John and I a hard time for the way that we joke, because we like to talk shit. If
we like to clown on each other.
We like to clown on each other.
And on other people.
And yeah, it's just kind of like the way that I grew up joking with all of my friends. And, there's no ill will behind it, but like the spiritual or conscious community, they don't like that kind of joking. They say that, even though
some people in those communities.
Right. And so like my point of view would be like, I don't actually have.
I'm just kidding.
I don't actually have ill will behind what I'm saying. I'm just kind of poking fun. But I guess what are your thoughts on that? Like the whole talking shit aspect of joking around.
I love it. I'm a huge shit talker.
All right.
Oh yeah, and especially in the age of like language policing, thought policing, I feel like it's a connection to sanity to still be able to talk shit. So I talk huge amounts of shit. It's all a matter of like our own personal programming at what works for us. And all of the languaging upgrades that I share, like there's no dogma, there are no hard and fast rules. It's all about being creative and applying these as we're inspired. So like, I'm a big fan of bringing back the word tits to mean great. So I'll say like, that's oh, wow, that avocado mousse was tits, right? Now, I personally don't have any hangups about like women's empowerment or feeling like a second-class citizen. Like that's not an issue for me. So for me, it feels actually empowering and fun to take those words back. Now, if I were someone who felt disempowered, who felt victimized to my, extra X chromosome, then it would be wise for me to examine how I'm talking about women, how I'm talking shit. But because that's not an issue with which I wrestle, I give myself free license to be as playful and shit talky as I feel like.
Love it. That's good. That's good stuff. Because yeah, we talk smack to each other all the time, but it's because we're also like more real with one another. Like I'm real with my wife. She's real with me. Ryan's real with his wife, and she's real with him. But there's people that it's hard to be real with and authentic. And when we're joking around, it's one thing. But then when we're actually kind of ticked off at one another, because unfortunately we do spend a lot of time together here at the office. He's our VP of sales too, and lives on our property. And I'm actually going to be officiating his wedding.
Hey, how about it?
Anyway, we're super close, but it's because we can be real with each other and be authentic with each other and not take it personal, although we do sometimes, but we always work through it, that I think we can shit talk each other because we're rooted in that foundation where we know that we care about each other and it's not coming from a place of hatred or hurt. Although sometimes there is a little truth to it, but then that always gets pulled out anyway.
Do you think that, because like I tend to be like, I wear my emotions on my sleeve and I like to
in flannel color.
Yeah, right. I like to shit talk with, even people that I just met. Like they'll say something and then I'll kind of like throw a little jab, just little playful jab to see like if they're down for that. But then sometimes, it gets taken the wrong way. Would you suggest, being who you are in every facet, or kind of
Yes.
like building the relationship first before you kind of shit talk, quote unquote?
Well, I think it depends on how we're wired. I'm an Aquarius, so I'm super rebel. I'm going to
Same.
shit talk from the get-go always. I'm also Gen X, so I'm not like a super special, delicate snowflake. Like I have a thick skin. And I know during times of tyranny and attempted fascist takeover, the sense of humor is the first thing to go. So I feel like I'm standing for freedom and justice when I am shit talking. And also I'm giving other people the benefit of the doubt and my confidence in their emotional intelligence, their maturity, and their ability to handle it. I'm not going to kowtow and pretend like everyone needs their own, personal trigger order. I'm going to be myself. And if people can't hang, then I'm probably not going to want to, put a lot of time into that relationship. I feel like we need to rebalance the scales from tiptoeing around everyone's contracted comfort zone and unintegrated trauma. Like, I just don't want to live in that kind of world. So I behave in a way that's reflective of the world that I'm living into. And I'm trusting that the people that I'm talking to have enough skills and tools to be able to handle it.
Yeah, it can be exhausting to do otherwise. I'm going to share my Dani Katz origin story and then follow up with the question about reframing. So I was at Confluence, which was a very spiritual event for me, not only because it was during the eclipse, this great big eclipse, which was supposed to be the end of the world, but it was also, I normally drink Kratom regularly, which helps with stress and anxiety. But I notice when I don't drink it, when I take a break, I feel my emotions more. And that was during a more extended break at that event. Anyway, so I was getting all the feels, great event, great people. Alex X, a total badass. We had the eclipse coming up. And we were staying in these little yurts in this yurt area. And I'm walking to the porta potty and make eye contact with Dani. And she just strikes up a conversation. Hey, how are you? Where are you from? Where'd you come in from? I was like, oh, we came in from Central Texas. We're in Bastrop. And she's like, oh, how long was the drive? It's about 3 hours or so. Oh, what'd you do on the drive? Well, I listened to, my wife and I listened to some real estate stuff. We're trying to do this real estate project, but it's been really hard. It's taken way longer than we thought. And it's just been a big challenge. And so she said, first of all, as an educator, as a leader, as somebody that's a support person, she said, do you mind if I offer you a word of advice? And so she asked for permission to offer that advice, which is great to lower people's barriers and resistance. I said, of course. Yeah. What do you got? She's like, you should consider reframing that to not say that it's challenging or it's been hard, because then it's going to continue to be hard. Right. And so I reframed it like, we've had challenges in the past, but now we're moving through with grace, or we've learned from some of the challenges in the past and now we're plowing forward. And it was just I don't know if that's the best reframe, but it worked for me, right? It was a moment where like there was a weight lifted off my shoulder and I realized, wow, we're manifesting and we're furthering difficulty and struggle by saying that it's difficult and a struggle, but by reframing it, we're putting that out to the world. Most importantly, we're putting it out to ourselves. We're showing ourselves that it isn't a challenge, that we can do it gracefully. And while it still has taken time and effort, we see a clear path. And it was cool because that event also, we tapped into this. I started accepting this private realm world and this sovereignty through law stuff, which then opened the door to this gentleman named Bradley Logan, who helped us set up a trust, a PMA, and a church, a ministry of nature, which we've now set up, which is also paving the way for further progress with this big project. So let me ask you, first of all, thank you for that, because it was very meaningful and impactful for me. Just one little nugget there made a huge world of difference. So can you talk about reframing and how it's important that we're conscious and mindful of the language and our thoughts as we speak it, because thoughts are another form of language, and how we can, through that mindfulness, we can catch ourselves and then do what I like to call flipping the script, or what do you call it? Some people call it reframing, flipping the script. Can you talk about the importance of that and maybe give some examples?
Absolutely. And I use both of those phrases interchangeably, flipping the script and reframing.
Right.
So the basic gist is that the subconscious mind is responsible for 95% of our experience of reality. And the subconscious mind is programmed primarily through language and repetition. So really, truly, I say this all the time, every word matters. And it's not like some throwaway catchphrase. It's true. Every single word we speak, we think, we text, we write, is programming our subconscious mind in every single moment. And the social engineers know this. They know this very well, which is why they go the distance to keep this information away from us. You know, when we're brought up in, you know, the Western education system, the Rockefeller indoctrination system, we're taught about language as a communication tool, which it absolutely is, but we're not taught how language is the primary reality creation tool. And so reframing is when we catch ourselves speaking a reality that we don't like, speaking how hard and challenging something is, speaking how terrible something is, instead of the fact that we're still learning, we're still in the process of mastering X, Y, Z. So it's radical self-responsibility in noticing how we are languaging ourselves and our lives and taking responsibility for our experience of reality, and starting to use language to frame reality for the kinder. You know, we all have free will. We all have the inner authority to choose to write our stories as we please. That's actually what authority means. When we go to the etymology, it comes from the Latin auctor, which means builder, founder, or one who causes something to grow, right? That's a huge leap from how, you know, the super co-opted Merriam-Webster dictionary or Google dictionary is going to define it as some external entity that can tell us what to do. Super simply, what does an author do? It writes stories. An author writes stories. So authority is our God-given right to write our stories however we choose. So it's noticing, am I telling a sucky story? Am I telling a victim story? Well, what would it be like to rewrite that story so that I'm the hero, so that I'm successful, so that I'm triumphant, so that I'm in the process of moving towards my goals and my visions, instead of carrying a sucky past with me into the present moment and thus seeding my future with more suckiness?
I'm really interested by, you know, because that was actually one of my follow-up questions was, you know, how far do you get into etymology? And I'm curious, like, what other words, one of the words that comes to mind is smart, you know, in this digital age. Smart, there's the smart home, there's the smartphone, there's all of these smart things. But, you know, here in the alternative conspiracy community, we're kind of like, smart kind of means control in our eyes. So I'm wondering what other words and their etymological, how do you even say that word?
Etymological.
Yeah, what John said. and those roots and how they're being used today and being co-opted.
There are a bunch of them, and I had a list going, which I wish I had at the ready. The ones that come to mind are so sorry, which, you know, we'll hear people say all the time. Women overuse this word, I think, the most, right? So say, you know, you come out of a public bathroom and you see that someone's been waiting for it, and you say, oh, sorry. Well, sorry means full of sorrow. So when I say sorry, when I didn't even do anything wrong, I'm programming our collective reality field with more sorrow. Worry is another one. Worry comes from, it actually means to choke to death, right? So anytime we say worry, we're invoking the frequencies of choking. And so when I talk about the metadata encoded in words, whenever you look up a word in the dictionary, there will be anywhere from like 3 to 10 different definitions. So all of those definitions are going to be encoded into the word, plus the etymology, plus our personal associations with the word and any sort of cultural overlays or inversions. So even if we're not aware, you know, that worry means to choke, when my yoga teacher says, don't worry about how high your leg is, just worry about how steady your breath is. He's actually instructing the whole class to invoke the frequencies of choking in his direction. So I, like everything with my work, I don't cling to anything too tightly. There's just a general awareness and mindfulness of what these words mean, and what qualities and energetics we're invoking when we use these words.
On that note, I want to bring this to your attention and get your opinion on it. And if you want to share some of your spirituality, that'd be great too. But this is from the King James Version of the Bible, and it's John, right? And John's more of the spiritual teachings of Jesus Christ, and it just leads off. And they say that this is like John's Genesis, basically. This is the New Testament Genesis. But chapter 1, verse 1, just right off the bat, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So being a conscious language specialist, what does that mean to you?
That passage is everything. And I'm not a religious woman. I haven't read the Bible in its entirety, but that particular phrase has been on my radar for the past 2 decades. And it's so meaningful. Aside from the fact that it's the very first sentence of this section of the Bible, the Word was with God and the Word was God. That tells us everything we need to know about the power of language and how everything that we are experiencing in this reality construct is a result of language, of the words we are ascribing to it. As all of us, I'm sure, you guys are dealing with your share of censorship, shadow banning, whatever sort of thought policing is coming through the big tech sphere. Nothing I do is more censored than sharing language as an empowerment tool. It seems to be the primary thing that the social engineers do not want the masses to learn about. Because when we understand how powerful our word is and how we can use language to create a different reality in the here and now, it shows us like how powerful we are, what a threat our deliberate conscious use of language is to the existing / crumbling power structures, and how little power they actually have. So that particular passage, to me, to use a millennial phrase, is everything.
I'm curious about curse words. We said talking shit earlier, but is there an actual aspect to saying any one of these curse words? Like, for instance, I've heard that just the word bitch ultimately lowers the person's frequency that you're talking to and your own frequency. So I would just, what are your thoughts about curse words in general?
So there's curse words and there's name calling. And I'm still mastering my own language and myself, and I tend to have a potty mouth. So I use all those curse words frequently. However, I'm not a fan of name calling. I'm not a fan of using curse words to degrade other people. I just use them in jest or like on the racquetball court or whatnot. But I also think there's something to taking words back. Like, I would say for the bulk of my adult life, I was not a fan of the word bitch, right? When it's bandied to demean a woman, I'm not a fan of that. At the same time, I'm never going to police anyone's language. But at this stage of my life, I'm finding it empowering to take that word back in a playful way, right? So, I have a group coaching call once a week. And when it's just women on the call, I'll be like, hey, bitches, what's up? Just, just to be funny.
Right.
So I feel like it's how we're using these words. Are we using the words to degrade, to dehumanize, to demonize? We would be wise to be aware of the large scale demoralization campaign that's going on in terms of like ideological subversion and how trash talking other people is a big part of it. But I have this very unpopular opinion around the N-word, right? Like, why are we allowed to say bitch? I can say I don't advocate the use of the word bitch. Oh, I don't advocate the use of the word kike, but I can't say I don't advocate for the use of the word that rhymes with bigger, because that word is so protected in our culture that we don't even allow ourselves to utter it, which I think is doing us as humanity a grave disservice. I think it's super infantilizing. I'm not lobbying for the banning of that word, but it's weird how even uttering it will get people canceled. So there's this weird, there's this weird kind of spellcraft, witchcraft going around with which words we're allowed to use and which words we're not.
What now? This is going to go totally off the rails, and I know John's going to hate it, but I wonder if you've ever looked into gematria, because, in regards to the N-word actually equals 42, black equals 42, Jackie equals 42. Jackie Robinson, the first famous black baseball player, wore the number 42. So I think that there's so much wrapped up with 42 and black culture and that kind of thing. What were your thoughts on gematria?
I love gematria. I haven't gone super deep into it. I have a pretty active dream life. And it was around the same time that I was downloading the languaging codes myself that gematria came to me in a dream, and I started looking into it and nerding out on it. Ultimately, I realized like a lot of, conspiracies or really interesting mystical paths to take that it's not really my own languaging paradigm. I think there's value in it. The podcast that I do with Emily Moyer, a lot of times we'll look up the gematria of certain words and phrases. I don't know enough about it to really do it any, valuable service.
Gotcha.
What's the gematria for coincidence?
Oh, here we go.
Selective bias.
Well, that's the thing. Just because he hasn't studied it enough, he thinks that it's all hogwash.
Yeah, but come on, the 42 jersey, was that deliberate?
N-word, Jackie Robinson wore number 42. I mean, come on.
Well, let me ask you: is it the N word is 42, or is it the word that we're not allowed to say is 42?
The word we're not allowed to say is 42.
Why don't you just say it?
Well,
because it is a weird thing.
Like, it is. It's very jarring, triggering. Like, it's like, whoa.
It's crazy to just see like using it in reference will shut people down. And how many people who are really self-aware and know themselves won't allow themselves to utter that word. So I know we're all interested in sovereignty. If I don't trust myself enough to say certain words, then I'm not sovereign. Then I'm a slave. Then I'm in a cage. And at the same time, in empowering all the negative, dehumanizing frequencies in that word, instead of allowing humanity an opportunity to rebrand that word, to neutralize that word and to take it back.
Yeah. I was thinking, my son recently learned what the F word means. Not fuck, but faggot.
Oh,
dude, I said it.
He's in trouble.
Because we were watching this family movie. I forget what it was, but I always try to turn the kids on to the classic 80s and 90s stuff, mostly the good 90s stuff. Like we watched Outbreak the other day with Dustin Hoffman and Kevin Spacey. Anyway, it's a great movie. They used to be like, no, Dad, we want to pick the movie. And they would like pick some new garbage. Sometimes it's good, but a lot of it's garbage. Same thing with music. But then, I started getting my picks in and they're like, whoa, Dad's got some good picks. This was a good movie. Except when we watch I Am Sam. Was that it? I Am Sam, another Sean Penn movie.
Is that the retard movie or the serial killer?
Yes, it's the retard movie. Okay. Yeah, and they're like also the one with Will Smith, Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh,
both of those. They're like, why are you making us watch this?
Anyway, because it's pre-Smith Modernization Act, and there's not quite as much propaganda in this as anything you'd see nowadays.
Right.
That's right. What I want to ask you about that law in a sec. But the movie was actually The Monster Squad from the 80s or 90s. It's a classic Halloween movie. It was during Halloween. And at the beginning, there's bullies, and they're bullying the young kid, calling him faggot. And my son's like, what does faggot mean? And my daughter, of course, explained it to him. And then he was calling her that and like working it in. I found myself being like, Bill, that's a word that's really offensive to people. So it's not like something you'd want to say at school and stuff. But then I'm also like, so there's a whole balance there.
That's a really good question. How do you raise your kids, obviously trying to be as sovereign as possible, but also like
to fit in with the broader society.
These societal ways where if you go out and say these words in society, you're going to be, way more outcast.
Like if you're at dinner at a friend's household or whatever.
Start dropping N-bombs and retards and all the rest of it.
He still won't say
it. Not a chance.
No. Maybe after a couple whiskeys.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's just a basic lesson in name calling, right? Like I was taught as a kid, there's a difference between lying, which everyone does, and calling someone a liar, which is dehumanizing and mean, and creates the illusion of separation. So, I'm not a parent myself, but I do teach homeschoolers. And so I teach about the vibrational frequencies in name calling, in labeling, and how it asserts this separation consciousness, which is really dangerous because it's separation consciousness that precedes violence, right? It's only when we think someone is separate from us that we feel emboldened to commit acts of violence upon them. So I think it's teaching children about the frequencies of language and how a certain word or phrase landing in someone's, heart, mind, and consciousness, what effects that's going to have. And then empowering the child with the free will to determine, do you feel comfortable having this effect on other people or not? Because I'm all about honoring free will, but just, really breaking it down for children so they understand the effects that their words are having on other people. And then, trusting them to make decisions for themselves from there.
What, on that note, one of the things I teach my kiddos is, first of all, if there's bullying or if the kids are on the receiving end of someone trying to put them down or hurt them, this is another power of language. And the way that I refer to it is to be a wizard. And so like my daughter had something that kids were making fun of her last year. In fact, just recently, she told me just last night, I was putting her to sleep. And she's like, the kids all the boys that were making fun of me last year, they actually all like me this year. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. They just don't know how to express themselves at that age. Anyway, I taught her like, if someone's putting you down and they're making fun of your appearance, chances are they feel insecure. Or maybe they're watching their parents put the other parent down, or maybe someone is putting them down. And so when you can see through what they're saying and don't take it, choose not to take it personal and rather try to have compassion for them, because for them to try to be hurtful to another human being, it's obviously that they're hurt people, right? And I think it was a big eureka for her to kind of see through that. So I just want to throw that out there. But then secondly, we're like obsessed with sales and marketing. And a lot of it has to do with sales and with language, the language that we use very deliberately, our own form of wizardry, so to speak. So what's your opinion on using language kind of through, a conscious sorcery? And I have no problem being persuasive and convincing people to do something that I feel very confidently will benefit them when we're selling a course often. And there's even two schools in sales where one's like, you don't push or like really overcome objections or we do urgency and scarcity. You got to purchase the offer before midnight tonight or you're going to miss out on all the bonuses. We send emails and some people are like, and other people are like, why are you always doing so much pressure? And it's like, because we know if you invest in yourself and you purchase this course, you're more likely to take the course than if it was free because you made an investment. And I know that it's going to help. It's going to be transformative. We work in consciousness and mindfulness and the mindset piece to all of our stuff. But anyway, what are your thoughts on using language consciously in order to persuade other people?
I think it's important and helpful, and it's a slippery slope. And it's a place where I'm still learning and I'm still moving through some ambivalence and misgivings about it because, again, I'm all about people's free will. And so who am I to think that I know what's best for other people, right? That's like my quantum languaging mindset on it. And so for a while, I had a lot of resistance to using language to manipulate people into negative emotions or negative timelines to get them to buy things. That being said, me sticking with that perspective really wasn't helping my business, and it really wasn't helping me attract people who could benefit, from my coaching, from my consulting, from my webinars, my books, whatever it was. And so what I've learned from experience is when I take the hands-off approach and decide not to use those, kind of marketing psychological tricks, then people do miss out on the benefit of my work, because I'm not utilizing psychology to help them tap into their pain points, to help them understand how my work can help. So I'm like, still moving through some reluctance to utilize the marketing language. But that's just my own stuff, because I know that it actually works. And I actually had a tussle with my publisher over the title of my latest book. It's called The Language of Betterarchy, A Blueprint for Uniting Against Tyranny. And I was going back and forth with her. I'm like, but it violates all of the presets of my work, that the very statement is uniting against tyranny. And she's like, great, you could talk about it on podcast because I'm your publisher and I have final say and we need to sell the most books possible. So you lose. And I'm so happy that that she stood her ground with that, because the human mind is super tricky. And if there's a way that I can talk myself out of investing in something, unfortunately, I'm going to do it.
Right.
So I'm coming around to marketing language and the value in it.
I'll share one thing. I was on the phone with this woman and she really wanted to sponsor our Exit and Build Land Summit. And she just didn't have the money. But unfortunately, she could scrap together the money for $1,000 sponsorship. Although it was my true and honest belief that the best sponsorship for her was the $2,500 level. So she could have a main booth, like in the main hall where the most traffic was. She would have the most amount of exposure and the most potential for more sales and business. And so, I stand to gain more commission if she does the higher package, right? But I truly believe that it was the best package for her. So she ends up pulling out 2 credit cards, puts 2/3 of the sponsorship on one credit card and then the other. And then she contacts someone else in her business and they pay for the last third of the $2,500 sponsorship. And then at the event, she ends up doing she sells 11 units, which were all like $1,000 a piece, I believe. So then she
doubled her investment.
She
tripled her investment.
She quadrupled her investment. And that was because I had the honest belief, although she had these limiting beliefs, I don't have the money, I can't afford that. But then once she figured out how to afford it, then she was amazingly successful. But without me trying to, coaching her and guiding her towards the absolute best product for her, then she would have settled for the $1,000 sponsorship and probably wouldn't have done as good of business
and pushed her own growth beyond her comfort zone, because she got uncomfortable with putting it on a credit card, but it ended up probably being the most valuable lesson for her besides the money she made.
Totally.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the phrase, she thought she couldn't afford it. So that's one of those phrases,
classic.
Like I said, a lot of my languaging precepts, there's always exceptions. I don't see an exception with I can't afford it. I see that as always, always, always disempowering, doubling down on scarcity consciousness, right? So in that instance, if she had said the words, and I don't know what the exact conversation was, I can't afford it is like closing a door on the possibilities to make this happen, versus I'm not yet seeing a way how I'm going to be able to swing this, or I'm open to a creative way for me to be able to make this work, right? I'm open to, or I'm still inviting the clarity on how I'm going to make this happen, keeps that door open, versus I can't afford it. It's just like erecting a brick wall around the possibility.
Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki would say, don't say I can't afford it. Ask how can I afford it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's a classic. Another great one is things aren't happening to me, they're happening for me. That's a Tony Robbins. And then I get to instead of I have to. That's one that I always get because we have a 10-acre homestead and we also have this business and staff and 2 kids and all sorts of stuff and a partridge in a pear tree. Now it's Christmas time. But, it's a lot of work and it could be overwhelming. Honestly, I'm trying to how can I reframe that? But just brass tacks, I'm overwhelmed at times. But it's something that it's not like some burden that's upon me. I've put myself in this situation because I want to make change in this world and because I like having community and because I want to lead by example with the kids. And so when we have a bunch of stuff to do on the property, like we just cleaned out the barn, and I was kind of dragging ass. But it's like, oh, we got to clean out the barn. I'm like, no, I get to clean out the barn. We have a 10-acre homestead and we have this cool barn that we're going to fence in so the chickens don't shit everywhere. I get to do that. Same thing with our CFO moved to a different opportunity, our chief financial officer. And it's like, oh, now I have to do the bookkeeping. I'm like, no, I get to do the bookkeeping. It's something I can sharpen my saw on because historically I've neglected that piece. I've always abrogated that responsibility. But now that I'm doing it because there is no other choice at the moment, I have more of a consciousness of the money and the cash flow of the business. So it's always that reframing and rescripting. And at the end of the day, we could be an invalid. We could be in poor health. There's always a worse situation that we could have. So in many ways, to be grateful for whatever we're going through, even if it can be a pain in our butts, I think really makes a huge difference in not only making it tolerable, but making it enjoyable and being grateful for it. The whole gratitude thing's another huge one.
Yeah, it's I write about this in the Language of Betterarchy. I call it the linguistic gunas. So if you're familiar with Ayurveda, they have the 3 qualities of being the gunas. So I call these the linguistic gunas, whereas every word or phrase is either expansive, contractive, or neutral. And we're wise to avoid contractive languaging that causes us to contract, that causes other people to contract. So when I'm introducing people to my work, I'll give them the very simple example. I have to go to work. I get to go to work. I'm going to work, right? So I have to go to work is contractive. I get to go to work is expansive. I'm going to work is neutral. When it comes to how we're programming our subconscious mind, we want to be a little bit about outside our comfort zone because that's where growth is, but we don't want to be so far out that the subconscious mind is going to be like, you're a liar and I'm tapping out and I'm mad at you, right? So I'm a huge fan of expansive languaging. I get to, but if I say I get to take my cat to the vet to have it put down today, that's get crazy, right? So that's a place where we're just going to lean into neutral languaging. It's not, I have to take my cat to the vet because I don't. Any have to is always going to connect us to victim consciousness, to disempowerment, to all of those frequency bands that are going to create more victimhood, more disempowerment, more drudgery, right? If I have to clean out the barn today, then how many things are going to go wrong with that framing? Because like frequencies attract like frequencies. So if I'm burdening myself with I have to, then the task is going to be all the harder because that frequency is going to create more roadblocks and more hassles. But in the instances of I get to put my cat down today, that's just insane, right? The subconscious mind is going to be like, you're a crazy person and I don't even believe you anymore, right? So it's knowing the right set and setting to toggle between neutral languaging and expansive languaging. So if I say I'm a money magnet, money comes to me easily and often, and I feel like I'm going to cry or I feel like a fraud, that expansive languaging is too much of a stretch for me. So then I want to come back to I'm willing to know myself as abundant. I'm willing to live into the experience of having more than enough money to pay my bills until I do enough of the inner work, rewriting the underlying belief systems that I can truly embody expansive languaging and have that be an honest expression for me.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's something that came up for me was with goal setting. So we're big fans of Grant Cardone, who's great for business and entrepreneurship and stuff. If you want to look into him in sales, he's on the extreme aggressive end. In fact, lately we've been doing, because we've built this valuable thing, especially with these events that we put on and sponsorships. And so we're doing what we call lean back, where if somebody's given us grief or if they are creating friction, we're just leaning back. And it's like, you know what, in all honesty, if this isn't a good fit, we totally understand, maybe sometime in the future. And that lean back, when one party leans back, the other party has an inclination to lean forward.
Mhm.
On the contrary, if we're leaning forward, desperate, pushing, then they lean back, right?
Yep.
But back to Cardone, he has this book called the 10X Rule. And I really appreciate it because it's like 10X the action, 10X the goals, but it's also 10X the amount of work that it's likely to take to pull off these big goals.
Mhm.
But there's this tension with goals because we study goals, we set goals within the company, personal goals, and then I teach a lot about goals. And on the one hand, the 10X goal is to set the goals so damn big and sexy that you're going to be even more motivated to execute upon them. They're going to be exciting to get out of bed about, right? And they're actually going to be life-changing. Let's say someone's making $60,000 a year. So if their goal was to make 10% more, 66,000, that'd be great. You know, they could pay down some debt, probably go out to eat a handful more times, maybe have a more lush Christmas for their family, but it's not going to be some dramatic life-changing thing. Whereas if your goal was to 10X your income to 600,000, now that's like, wow, can I imagine what my life would be like if I was earning 600K, what causes I could support, the home I could buy my family, whatever. We could go to Europe and fly private. It's more motivating, but then at the same time, there's that inauthenticity thing. And there is one catch. He says, if your goal is so ambitious and so sexy, and then you come up short. So let's say you only get to 25% of that goal. That's still 150K compared to 66,000. But that internal thing that's like, come on, let's be real, John, could also play against you, just as trying to trick yourself could play against you when you get to put the cat down. Can you talk to because the way I see it is like, I've been so hyped up on this self-development and spiritual stuff, you know, from Buddhism to Napoleon Hill, Tony Robbins for years and years and years now. And it's a lot of it's starting to click. I kind of am conscious of the fact that I've like programmed myself. It's a reprogramming, really. But it's like whenever those limiting beliefs come up, I'm ready. I'm almost in the moment, recognize them and then just wash them away. Now, there's sometimes when I'm really bitter, usually when there's strong emotions, and I'll like consciously wallow in it.
Mhm.
It tends to be when I'm in a fight with my wife and not much other stuff, to be honest. Oftentimes we're the hardest on the people that are close to us because they stick around. Maybe that's why I'm so hard on this guy. But and sometimes it'll be like, I know the way that I'm communicating or the way that I'm communicating to myself isn't in alignment with what I've learned and being my highest self. But fuck it, I'm going to be that way anyway because it feels good right now. Or I know that it's going to be harder to like face like, well, what role did I play in this? And what's being manifested here based on maybe my past relationships or whatever the hell. But what are your thoughts on programming and like consciously like brainwashing ourselves in a way?
I mean, I'm a huge fan of it because this whole realm is a dance. It's fiction. It's Leela. We're all making it up as we go along. So I'm a fan of like faking it till I make it and just writing the shiniest, sparkly story. I have a similar tendency as you. I can wallow. I can go into like, you know, being super dramatic and dragging out some negativity. And I'm still in the process of, you know, transmuting those tendencies in myself.
I get to wallow.
I listened to this video from John Wineland this week, and he had such a great trick for this, where it's like, I really feel like lashing out. I really feel like being self-destructive. I really feel like telling you you're a fucking asshole. You know, so it's like there's the expression gets to come out, but I'm also, there's this caveat of like, I'm not going to go backwards in my development. This is just a temporary feeling. And in that, it becomes lighter, it becomes more playful because I'm responsible enough to not be like really going there, but just telling my partner, you know, I want to punish you. I want to do this. But with some self-responsibility mixed in while I'm still transmuting those older tendencies.
I like that. Yeah. It's kind of like when you're consciously like, you're acting like a bitch, but you're not a bitch, right? You know, you're like consciously, it's a halfway thing, halfway there. You're conscious of it. I like that. Yeah. And I'm feeling like that. I'm not going to, but I've also signaled to you that I'm feeling that way, just so you know. That's another thing too that I struggle with. Like, there's just so much mindfulness that there'll be something I want to say, but I know I'm deliberately saying it for there to be a little bit of hurt or to send a message.
Yeah.
And I know that that's being passive aggressive as opposed to just using nonviolent communication. When you do this, I feel this way, blah, 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 blah. So that's a trip. It's kind of like a blessing and a curse to be in that position, because it can be kind of exhausting. But at the same time, I guess it's okay to let stuff slip every once in a while. It's just a journey. It's a journey. The more comfortable two people can be with one another, the more you can just be authentic and just let it rip. You don't even need to have a hidden signal message wrapped in some bullshit passive aggressive comment, because you're just let it all out and just go straight to the emotions. What's your thoughts on nonviolent communication? And one thing that came up earlier in the interview, I wanted to bring this up. You talked about not being so rigid. And I know there's a lot of nonviolent communication Nazis that will be like, you got to do it this way and this way, but then it just throws off the whole purpose. What are you an advocate of nonviolent communication? And if so, can you explain what it is and or why you're not, and what the thoughts are there?
Sure. I love nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg's work. Of course, I'd love to rebrand it, right? Because we're invoking violence in describing it that way. And he was a pioneer, no question. And again, going back to marketing language, that's probably going to sell more books, sell more courses than calling it peaceful communication, which is a little bit passive. It's so helpful in relationships because it takes us out of projection, out of blame, and we're owning our experience. So basic precepts of nonviolent communication, and I'm not like a nonviolent communication certified coach or anything, but it's taking ownership of our experience of people and our experience of what they're saying, instead of saying, you made me feel like this, you did that. You know, any sort of prescriptive you statement is very likely to inspire contraction, shut down defensiveness in whomever we're speaking with, especially in times of conflict. So nonviolent communication is just a phenomenal, like, foundational tool to help us take responsibility. I'm not a fan of policing anyone's language, especially in times of conflict. So if I'm in a fight with my partner and I'm, you're using your statements, you're doing this, I'm distracting and deflecting from the real message at hand. So I feel like there's a lot more value in me mastering my own emotions, my own communication, giving people the benefit of the doubt, especially when things are heated, and deferring to what I'm pretty sure their intention is. Now, when things calm down and my partner and I are off the ledge and things are peaceful, that's a great time to have the conversation. Sweetheart, I don't really respond well to those you statements, and I'd like to make a request moving forward that when things get heated, it would work better for me if you'd be willing to simply own your experience without the projection. But when things are heated, no language policing. That is not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. More often than not, it's like a one-up. You're trying to one-up or control rather than just letting it flow. Okay. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time together. This has been awesome. I'd love to give you the opportunity to share some of your work. You got a website, DaniKatz.com, DaniKatz.com. Let me see how I can now. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, but I lost the sound for a little bit.
I'm still trying to master this stupid program that's supposed to.
You're doing great.
I get to learn a new program because because I'm excited about this. Anyway, so I was sharing that we've had a great time chatting with you, and I know your website's DaniKatz.com. Looks like you have a free newsletter folks can subscribe to, but you also have some courses and some opportunities for folks to dive deeper. You want to share a little bit about that, and I can kind of navigate here through your site?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you. And I want to thank you for having me on the show. It's been super fun. I love our conversation. So, yeah, what I'd love to direct your audience specifically to is I have a pop propaganda digital media literacy course for teens. I used to teach live homeschool classes, and there was such a demand that I just digitized the course. So it's 11 modules. Great way to safeguard your teens from media manipulation, propaganda, and groupthink. I also just re-released my Yes, I Am transformational coloring book. It's 444 pages. I had every single page redrawn for optimal colorability. It's super encouraging, inspiring, confidence building, makes a great gift for kiddos and grownups alike. And you can find all these things on my website, danikatz.com.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay, great. I just dropped the link there. And then let me drop the link for the coloring book because, yeah, I have a few of your books, actually. I bought them there at Confluence. You blew me away. So I was like, I got to get these books and dive deeper. I just think it's such an important thing because it really is. It creates our reality. And that whole John, chapter 1, verse 1, the word is God. Like it's pretty clear cut, no matter what our understanding of God is, it is just a powerful force that can either tarnish our life or it can enhance our lives. And we get to be the ones that choose which way it goes. Which was the book you were talking about here?
So Yes, I Am is the coloring book, which was just re-released last week. The Language of Betterarchy is my newest quantum languaging book, and it's about how to transform our society out of the outdated hierarchical structure into what I'm calling betterarchy. Word Up is a great place for people to start. Very simple, basic languaging hacks for personal transformation. And then I have Pop Propaganda, an illustrated guide, which I created as a textbook for my digital media literacy class. It features 37 tools, tricks, techniques the social engineers use to attempt to manipulate us. And it's way more fun for kids than the Bernays book.
Okay, great, great. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. We'd love to have you back again in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Dani.
I'd love it. Thank you guys so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Good stuff, Mr. Right Guy, you piece of shit.
That was a great interview. Very fun. And yeah.
We like to have fun on the show.
It was fun.
Speaking of fun, another fun time you can have is joining our good friend Jonathan England's Off-Grid Dream Life webinar. It's absolutely free to join. We want to encourage you to follow the links that are down in the show notes. We do have a referral link there, so we get a little piece of the action. You want to support what we're doing here at the show. But this webinar, it's coming up live again, December 21st, 5 p.m. Central. Sign up today. You got 10 days to watch it. And essentially, he's going to teach you a lot of mindset stuff. Again, the language, the mindset, the overcoming limiting beliefs, a lot of that, but also some of the mechanics if you want to create an off-grid dream life. What does that look like? Living in an eco village, living in an intentional community, joining one, building one, and on top of all that, he gives you an exclusive invite to go check them out in Costa Rica. Ryan had the privilege of visiting down there recently. What was that like?
It was absolutely awesome. And, I'll be very conscious with my language since we just talked to Dani. It was a very transformative experience, probably like actually life-changing. When I look back on it, it was absolutely phenomenal. I'd love to go back. I can't wait to go back. We're going back in March, and it's just, it's a phenomenal place. And it's really amazing to see a community that's fully built out. A lot of people are a year or two away from creating their communities. They've already done it. They've built the whole thing out. And I would strongly encourage anybody who's interested to see what a real intentional community is like. I definitely encourage you to go to offgriddreamlife.com and register for Jonathan's webinar where he explains everything about the community to you. And then he presents you with a very special opportunity to go visit them. So I would encourage everybody to go check that out.
Yeah. And he's encouraging people to go check it out in part because he wants to, attract more people because they just bought it's a 5-acre community, but then they have a 50-acre piece of land that they're buying or they already bought to expand the community. But the offer is so affordable. You literally could go down and just do a week-long retreat. Even if you don't move down there, he loves spreading the message of freedom, spreading the message of JC, Jesus Christ. Really solid group of people. And you're in Costa Rica, so the food's absolutely fresh and incredible. And they I can't believe the price for this. It's like a 5-day retreat for pennies on the dollar. So check it out, offgriddreamlife.com. Offgriddreamlife.com is the website. All right, you got any parting words there? Manity, a glass of water?
I'll just say that, Jonathan England, he's not like evangelist or anything like that. As in his own words, he says he used to be a deadbeat, broke, atheist, beach bum, and he lived that way for many, many years. So he's very fun and relatable. He does keep JC in the center of his heart, but it's very, very fun down there. People love to shit talk and all this kind of stuff while also being Christ-centered. So I would encourage anybody under the sun, Christ-centered or not, although you should be.
Oh, you're gonna burn.
No, but also Jonathan England says a sin is not an action to be punished, but a perspective to be corrected. So kind of a lot of the things that we think about hell, hell is something that we live in our minds when we're in this false perspective, when we're living in sin with these false perspectives and everything. So really like what the old way of like Christian teaching, you're going to burn in a lake of sulfur for eternity and all these things. It's kind of BS. Like it's actually much more practical and applicable. And the way that Jonathan teaches it is really captivating. So check out offgriddreamlife.com and you can have that very special opportunity to spend a week with Jonathan and his community.
Let's go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Live Free Now Show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live free and prosperous life. Until next time, remember every Wednesday, 11 a.m.
Every Wednesday.
Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat place. You can check us out. I hope you'll share the show with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can join our free email newsletter at livefree.academy/newsletter. That's livefree.academy/newsletter. Hope you'll join us for the webinar tomorrow, livefree.academy/unlock, livefree.academy/